Hi, everyone. Welcome to this month's Community Hour. We're going to chat about AI today, so we're super excited to have you. We're going to give it a couple of minutes and let some folks join. This has been a very popular Community Hour topic, so we're really excited to have you all join today. Excited to hear about AI. We all know that it's one of those things that's ever changing, and excited to hear some more stuff about it.
Yeah, it's a popular topic everywhere we go, right? We're having a lot of conversations here, just across the board, and the generative AI stuff has actually caused a resurgence in conversations around just plain old traditional AI as well.
True. Plain old AI.
Yeah,
Plain old AI.
Well, let's
I
go
love it.
ahead and get this started. So welcome everyone. My name is Jenny, and I'm the membership and senior programs at here at Elevate. We are an independent customer-led user group that focuses on Dell Technologies customers on that multi-cloud journey to modernize their IT infrastructure. The user group helps members advance their people, process, and infrastructure to drive that business outcome. The way that we do this is we bring customers, Dell employees, and partners together to have conversations and to network with one another. Today is a great example of that. Thank you again for joining. If you have any questions today, please use the Q&A function as well as the chat. We'll kind of keep that up to date and answer those questions throughout today. At the very end of the community hour today, I will send a link that will be for a survey. If you fill out that survey, you'll be entered in to win a gift card. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to David.
Thank you, Jenny. And thank you, panelists, for showing up. And thank you, everybody, for taking the time to be here today. My name's David Giesica. I'm with the Elevate User Group. And my co-host today is the fantastic Suzan Pickett, Senior Vice President of Infrastructure Engineering at Citizens Bank, and also our Elevate board member. Suzan, thank you for co-hosting with me. We've got a great topic and some great experts in addition to the expertise you bring. Justin Jones, Senior Consultant GenAI at Dell Technologies, and Nick Brackney, Senior Consultant GenAI at Dell Technologies. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. This conversation is probably, as we looked into it, it could go on forever. So what I'd love to do is just give people enough to start thinking about, and then we'll probably get this onto a revisit later in the year so we can see how things have changed. Justin, you were saying earlier just how much all of this is, how quickly everything is changing. So, certainly we heard a lot about it last year. There's an awful lot going on. Suzan, it's got to be really interesting being in the, kind of on the front lines, seeing how all of this is working and how you have to juggle it to put it into execution. So I'm really looking forward to the conversation. As Jenny mentioned, folks, we've got chat and we've got the Q&A. So please be involved and get involved with us. Before we start, I will thank our sponsor, Dell Technologies, for helping this happen. And we're going to kick it off. I've got some things that I'd love to hear about today, guys. Really, what's in it for IT professionals? Where should AI or Gen AI be on the list of priority projects? Because there's always a project list. How do you filter through the hype versus actionable intel, I'll call it? What are timelines? How quickly should this be done? Is this a yesterday? Is there plenty of time? Don't worry. And then I've got a little note here. Does AI equal NVIDIA? So these are topics that we could dig into. Suzan, anything else kind of big picture that I missed or that you'd like to dig into before we get started?
That was a lot of questions, David.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, you sound amazing. Congratulations on your new microphone. Want to welcome everybody. I've been seeing people put in the chat. I recognize a few names, so hope you stick around for some question and answers after. Really want to focus, Nick and Justin both bring some senior Gen AI concepts, architecture. I'm not going to be able to speak very well today, so everyone just level set on that. I really want to give them the time to focus on what they're seeing around Gen AI right now. And if there's time, I can talk a little bit about some of our observability and monitoring and our kind of journey, if you will, both with Gen AI and some AI ops, which might be a great starting point for a lot of people on this call. So, with that, I know before we went live, Justin and the team were talking, and you had a leaky faucet, Justin. So you want to kind of tell everyone that story and how that led to you using some AI this weekend?
Yeah, absolutely. And so just as a kind of a clarity piece, I actually work specifically on use cases for generative AI. I talk to a lot of customers about how do you get started? How do you identify those use cases? So that's something we can focus on a little later, but I had a great example this weekend. Had this faucet leaking. It was spraying water out from that piece at the end you see there. I am not a plumber. I don't know what the name of that piece is. So I was able to take a picture of it, draw an arrow to it, and ask Chat GPT, what do I call this piece? And it promptly responded with hose bib vacuum breaker. It's an important piece. It's actually required by law. It keeps water from being siphoned back into my house and getting the family sick with any kind of bacteria. And so I asked Chat also, hey, can I replace that? And it said yes. So being the industrious home improvement person that I am, I grabbed that term, I brought it to YouTube, and the second hit was a perfect video telling me exactly how to get the job done. Now, if you guys have done home improvement, you know that searching through YouTube videos is not typically a quick process. There's an hour or so of looking for the right video. There's going down several rabbit holes that you didn't mean to, and then there's finally the solution. I then took this exact verbiage. I went to Lowe's. I told the person at the end of the aisle what I needed. He pulled it up on the list. He got it for me, and I was out of Lowe's in about 8 minutes. This saved me hours out of my day. And I don't bring this up to tell you guys how to do any plumbing at the house. But what I would say is we're just at the front edge of understanding the use cases for this technology. I mean, there's already so many like content generation and natural language search and digital assistants, but that is going to grow as this technology becomes more ubiquitous across the board. The second part is everybody in the world is going to be affected by this technology, from plumbers to data scientists, from healthcare to manufacturing, right? This technology has something to offer them. I hear the question a lot, are we in a hype cycle for Gen AI? And, maybe there's a little bit of hype, but I also think there's a lot of value here that we're unpacking. Dave, you look like you had a question. You have hype cycle concerns.
Yeah, I'm guilty of that, Justin. But we were talking earlier. Every now and then I get these examples, and it makes me pause and say, that's kind of wow.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's amazing. I've gone down that YouTube rabbit hole like nobody's business. I'm amazed that it can even see the arrow that you drew there. It looks like there's a little graffiti.
Yeah, it's incredible. And the use cases, like I said, they just continue to grow. And so I don't think it's a hype cycle. And I'd ask Nick actually to comment on this. We talk a lot about.
I still think we're going up, buddy. I'm my theory on this is we've reached the end of the consumer grade generative AI hype cycle, right? Like with Sora,
Okay.
that's probably going to be the plateau there, right? But imagine this. Once you start applying company data to these things, once people start hitting gold there, this thing's going to take off. So I'm still on the way up on this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And Justin, I hesitate to tell you that you could probably get on your home do-it-yourself storefront app, and it will take you to the row and cabinet and shelf that you need. So you didn't actually have to talk to that guy at the end of the aisle. And someone posted a kind of a comment in the chat, which was great. When do you have this end-to-end connectivity? And I think that's really what we're talking about that today. We're on the cusp of that. And how do we leverage Gen AI to make it so that when Justin's hose bib breaks, or his vacuum thing breaks, he can immediately, just say, hey, this broke, and oh, hey, now it's showing up on my phone. The scary part is it'll probably start doing that anyway, but to have that end-to-end capability, I think is really the most powerful. One thing too, I'll admit it, but just keep it here in this call, everybody. Yesterday I was opening up hiring. I was opening up a requisition, and a recruiter said, hey, I need a couple bullet points on justification. And I'm like, oh, I don't have time for that. I'm in like 20 hours of meetings. And so kind of went out and did a little chat GPT and was like, hey, give me a summarized executive justification for this, and this, and put it in this kind of tone and do this for me. And it spat out a couple really powerful, impactful sentences. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to use this. And, it was everything I wanted and nothing I didn't need. And that's helping me in my day-to-day life. So I'm wondering, Justin and Nick, what are some other examples of what you're seeing in the day-to-day activityness of what's going on that's just helping people accomplish more of what they're looking to do?
Nick, why don't you take this one?
Yeah, no, I mean, anything from content creation, like incident response. One of our good examples of this is your security or your IT, and you're having to explain to an audience that doesn't really care about the tech. You can just type it in there and say, hey, this is what we had happen today. Can you write an email? Please make sure that you target it to my CEO. It needs to be focused on the business impact, not on like, oh, it was because this fan went out on this server and blah. Like, they don't care about that. They want to know what the business impact is and how you're remediating it. So that's a good example. Documentation. I know a lot of developers don't like to write documentation. This can be a breeze for that. Natural language coding. I was actually out on a vacation up until yesterday or 2 days ago, and we were in Mexico, and somebody used it to translate the bill so that everyone could figure out what everyone had. So translation's a great example of this. Digital assistance on websites and stuff like that for interfacing with customers, or even employee onboarding. I mean, like literally one of the things I've said is Malcolm Gladwell coined a phrase 10,000 hours to be an expert in anything, and I think this is going to kill that, because it's if you're smart enough, if you're good enough with these tools, and if you can double check your work, it's going to take you a lot less time to become an expert in something.
So I know when we were having a conversation last week, and we were talking about kind of the left brain, right brain, AI, ML versus Gen AI. Can we focus a little bit on, because we hear these terms thrown out quite a bit, and I'm sure everyone else on the call has, and some may be a little further down the journey, but can we focus a little bit more on, really what is Gen AI bringing to the table, and the kind of the focus around that? And then we'll backtrack a little bit later and maybe talk about some AI and AI ops and where we can get some quick wins in that space.
Yeah, if you look at this slide, obviously artificial intelligence is a very broad term. It encompasses all of these things. But typically where that was really good at is analyzing, predicting, it's very good at math, things of that nature. What we're doing with generative AI is we've introduced some variants. It's kind of interesting. It's almost crazy how it works, because you're going, how is that going to lead to what we're seeing in it? By some magic, it does. But effectively, how the generative AI works is it's seeking out the next word to put it in there, and it's basing it off of a probability. So they've introduced a bit of variance. And what that has allowed it to do is create net new content. That could be imagery, could be text, could be video, could be synthetic data, which is actually pretty helpful for IT folks, right? Because you may want to test something and you don't have any information on that, so you can go, hey, please generate some synthetic data for me. I need logs that indicate that there was an issue, XYZ issue, so that I can test my monitoring, something of that nature, or what the response would be.
So a couple comments in the chat, I think they're spot on. I think some of the big concerns around a lot of the real world companies that are out there, especially those that are heavily regulated and governed, like the financial industry, which I'm in. The concern is how do we, I think I'll answer my own question, but I'd like for you to pop on. We're not opening this up to the World Wide Web, right? This is not going to be all internet based, but we're focusing on particular use cases that are confined, if you will, within our own environment. So they're learning from our data. They're using AI, using ML for the data and AI for the analytics and the predictive analysis. And because they're using our data and we're training them on that data, we should have much more confidence in the output of that. Because I know I too have the concerns when I'm, if I'm out and I'm trying to learn about something and I'm looking at it with a skeptical eye and saying, is this accurate? Is it learning from something completely bogus? So just wondering what you guys think about that.
Yeah, there's one thing I think that's really interesting about this, which is it depends on the use case, obviously, and if there's a human in the loop or not. If you have a human in the loop, the risk goes down because you have the human who's able to register that this is incorrect. So a good example of this is I have a buddy, he works at Microsoft, and he got really excited about this technology and using it for analyzing their not their logs, but their incident reports or the tickets that come in. And what he was doing was saying, this is what the ticket looks like. Find me one that from last time this occurred. And then what did we do last time? So what he's doing is he's popping it up, looking at them and saying, okay, does this make sense that I do this again? Yes, I'm going to go do it. Now, one of his colleagues was thinking about using this and automating the process. And the problem with that is that's not going to be nearly, we're going through all my slides now.
We're going to jump on this one. I think this speaks to what you're talking about and the type of model you're going to use with your data.
Yeah, I was going to say, though, the confidence of being able to automate something, that's more the AI ops world, right? That's more AI. It's going to give you the right answer 100% of the time, right? It's going to be repeatable. So this guy was going down this path of trying to use generative AI for that use case, and I think that's actually an incorrect usage of the technology, right? So you got to be very clear about what you're trying to accomplish. Justin, you want to go through and explain what we're seeing here about the value of the data?
Yeah, I think that I looked at the comment in the chats, and it specifically talks about hallucinating and having an answer that may not be 100% correct. And that's what you will see sometimes in these very large language models, because they have such a broad set of data they've been trained on. They have so many use cases, and they get kind of creative, which is fantastic from a marketing point of view, right? If I want to write some new content and I want to develop some new ideas and analogies and tie it together, that creativity is key. However, if I've got a chatbot that's talking to my airline customers, so you probably saw just recently, Air Canada is being held liable for their chatbot giving a refund to a customer that they didn't really plan for it to give out. But if you need that accuracy, the largest of language models may not be the answer. As you get a little more domain specific, you size down your model a little bit and you look at training it specifically with your data, you can get more accuracy out of this. We'll talk about some of those models here, but this might be what we call retrieval augmented generation. If you're looking at this, you probably heard of RAG models. This might be a little bit of fine tuning. And then on the far end here, you start talking about even smaller models that give you the opportunity to deploy them where you need to right size, run them on the right infrastructure, understand what your scale is going to look like as you move through them, and are much more targeted in their functionality and their accuracy.
And this is really important too, because when we first looked at this, everyone's thinking, I can't build a 1.7 trillion parameter model. There's no way I can afford that. But the good news is you don't have to, right? That's the key, is you're most likely going to find your success with domain specific or enterprise specific models.
Yep.
Justin, Nick, can I jump in for a second? Justin, you mentioned something that, to me, chatbot. I've seen chatbots for years. Why is this different? What's different? Like, why is this a thing now?
So in a nutshell, think about your traditional chatbot of going kind of down to a decision tree, right? It's going to take you down a pretty set path of answers, and it only has so many responses. When you instead move this to generative AI, now you've got contextual answers that can pull from a larger corpus of information with much more specific information, understanding what you're asking it. So, I mean, there's, we could talk a lot about how the way the AI works, but that's kind of it in a nutshell. The chatbots are a little more personal, a little more empathetic, maybe even, and they have more accurate information now, specific to your ask.
How do you know that you're using a chatbot that's that gen versus like the old school one?
That's a good question.
David.
Probably, yeah, you could probably ask it. You could probably, through the experience, and I think the experience is going to be key here. When we talk to customers, we talk about let me back up. This is a hammer that already has nails, right? In IT, sometimes we're guilty of developing new tools and we're looking for that nail. That's not the case here. You're going to have this pop up and be used everywhere. That's why shadow AI is something that people are talking about. That's why the experience that you create for your chatbot or for your tools needs to be a good experience, or your teams are not going to adopt it, and they're going to create that shadow AI problem.
Let's be clear. That's why, you folks that are leading the charge in IT, why you can't ignore this, because everyone's got a phone in their pocket. Even if you ban the URLs, like they whip those out. And the thing is that what I tell people is, unlike shadow IT, where only your developers you had to worry about, every person from an admin to an executive is a point of failure in this.
Yeah, and
it's got to be.
Go ahead, David.
I was just going to say it's got to be a security nightmare. Suzanne, how do you think about that?
It is, absolutely. And that's why when we first started talking about Gen AI and AI ML generally, because the maturity meter's gone like this in the last just even few months, we really started looking at where we're using the internet. And so that came with, the inaccuracy or maybe some false returns on the data, and people were learning how to dictate kind of the tone and the how we were delivering the content. But really, when we're talking enterprise specific, again, we're isolating that. We're not having it go out to a bot in Russia. Sorry if anyone's Russian on the call. It wasn't meant to be targeted. But we want to be able to have confidence and trust in that data. So we're creating, again, we're training the models around a specific set of data that's relevant to us within our own organizations and company, and therefore that confidence. But one thing I do want to thanks Steve. One thing I do want to bring up is, Ian and Cameron, I think, brought up some really good points. And the thing that we're specifically looking at is, how do we ensure this all goes through a standardized pipeline, so that we are limiting and restricting, if you will, the shadow AI, and instead providing that pipeline that's consistent with our other automation activities. And we have that consistency, the standards and the governance and compliance wrapped around it, so that we do have some guide rails in place. And that, again, internally to, where I am. So that's something to think about. Is this is so absolutely, just from technology perspective. When we got super excited when virtualization first came out, we jumped on the bandwagon when containerization and microsegmentation came out, and all of these things were really groundbreaking at the time. And this is going to be, I think, the one for our generation, literally our generation. And so, Jim Hall made a comment in the chat, it's AI or die. And really, we all need to be preparing for the future. And that future means that, again, whether it's a competence scale or it's, we're modulating the training that we're giving the Gen AI and the AI ML. But again, you still have to have some common sense and a pragmatic approach to how you do it. So the wider you would open it up, the less confidence maybe you have, but the more data you get. But again, most of the use cases, the functional use cases, are going to be more in that enterprise specific. And then I can see partnerships and collaboration forming, financial groups coming together, maybe to redact and share some data in that space, or in, manufacturing. other industries coming together to share. And that's really where I think you're looking at that middle space. It's like, what are other people learning or doing from similar types of data that's out there? And I think that's where we can get really creative and we can learn a lot from each other. So, hopefully this doesn't isolate us more. It expands in, our collaboration and cooperation with everybody. That would be the goal, make technology to make life better for everybody.
Well, I think we're seeing that with the models themselves. We're seeing a lot of open source models, which is great. Instead of, building your own, and spoilers, great segue for this one. The spoilers, the two on the right, fine tuning and model training, are way more energy intensive and way more expensive to do. So instead of, I'm actually in the process of doing a whole reduce, reuse, recycle kind of a narrative on this. But, instead of building your own model, leveraging a Llama 2 or Mistral or, Nemo from NVIDIA, that's really going to put you in a good place. Now, I'll kind of unpack these 4 things here just to give you an idea. The one on the left is just simple inferencing. Now, all of these at some point are going to involve simple inferencing, right? The way to think about this is inferencing is putting your data to work, right? The rest of this is all putting it to school, right? So you're putting the model to school so it could then do the work, right? So model augmentation, we talked a little bit about retrieval augmented generation. What that is, and this is an exciting thing that they came up with, is they found a way to get the model to translate unstructured data that you're throwing into it, right? So think of this as I change what the model knows, right? So I'm changing what it has access to as far as its ability. Someone was joking, it's like in Matrix when they download a new ability, right? They're like, just give me the machine gun, and boom. But so that one, what's really key about that is that's going to unlock being able to use your data anywhere. And you don't need a data scientist for that. You can get started with just a developer, which is great. I'll post in the chat. There's a model that we built out that's available on GitHub that you can play around behind your firewall. Fine tuning, that's where you're going to start to try to change how the thing thinks, right? So now it's like, if it understands what a cat looks like, and I send it all of Dell's pictures of animals, of all the pets we have, it'll say cat or no cat, but I need it to be able to say dog. So now I have to go in and do supervised or unsupervised machine learning. The last one, model training, outside of tech and outside of telco, typically we're only seeing people do this if they have data sets that are very complex and they maybe aren't available. There wasn't any available data to train on. So think like genomic mapping, that kind of thing. If you click one more time, I think we showcase, I mean, it's twice.
Oh, we do. I'm having mouse issues. 1 second. There we go.
Well, while you're doing that, I want to call out Justin, because my first thought, and I was on mute, was I know Kung Fu. So when you put that in the chat, I wanted to high five you. So I just wanted to put that.
Yeah. There's a question on the 80-20 rule. I'm assuming you mean about the models. So what I would say is the rule that I would have is don't overbuild. Right size the model, right? You go and you test it. If you can do it with Copilot on a laptop, go ahead and do it with Copilot on a laptop, unless you're really concerned about security or IP or anything like that. You should only be moving to the right if you're getting bad answers, right? If changing what it knows doesn't work and you have to change what it thinks. So an example of this would be, I probably wouldn't use inferencing for my messaging because I need it to sound like me. So I'd probably use model augmentation. I would feed it a bunch of stuff that sounds like me and say, go do this. With fine tuning, I'm probably doing that if I'm really concerned about things like hallucinations, right? So I go into it and I say, do not answer this unless you are 100% certain. And you can put instructions like that in there in the guardrails, and that will greatly reduce any risks. So if I have a customer-facing type of application, there's no human in the loop, that's probably when I might look at fine tuning.
Nick, to interrupt and circle back, you said hallucination, and I don't want to glance over that because I think you're familiar with that term. I don't know what that means, and I know what it means outside of AI. So could you just baseline us?
Yeah, basically hallucination, it's just a catch-all term that they put out there when it gives an incorrect answer. It'll always sound very confident. So that's why they're like, oh, it's hallucinating. But
So-
effectively what it is, it's typically a mixture of either bad data or bad guardrails, right? And so that's where doing this in-house, even if you're using one of these models, if you put your own data into it, it will automatically become better at answering. But you're still gonna have to fine tune it a little bit.
So how do you identify a hallucination if it's so confident?
I mean, you really have to do some homework. You always have to, as a user, you have to be very careful. And then, by the way, that's another part I didn't mention is prompt engineering. How you write and ask it questions oftentimes will give you a better answer. So if you ask it a bad question or you ask it a question the wrong way, that could lead to more of those hallucinations. So, but you have to check your work. This thing is going to accelerate everything that you do. It'll take hours off. And so effectively what we're saying in marketing, at least, is instead of spending hours creating the content and writing it, I'm going to spend those hours reviewing it, right? And making sure it's accurate.
So, hey, I'd love to jump in because I love what's happening on the chat, and I keep the questions coming, please. And I'm an IT guy. I used to live on the data center floor, so I feel a lot of the IT folks on this call here, and I see Joseph making a comment about how important it is for everybody to understand what this can do and the bigger picture, right? It's not just for one team. And I think as IT leaders on this call, there's an opportunity to lead within your organization because different lines of business are going to want to participate here. But like we talked about up front, you're going to get stuck running it. We're seeing, I was with a partner earlier today, and we were talking about how this kind of curve of adoption has been working. And initially, some folks tend to test a lot of this in these open models online because it's easy and fast. But when they want to implement it, a lot of them are moving on premises, and that's going to affect the IT teams specifically. So there's an opportunity to kind of, lead from the front here because, talking about things like policies for not just, shadow AI, but your AI. Suzan, this is where you bring those teams together that you were just talking about, right? Because you have to have consensus on policy. You have to have consensus on the infrastructure. You have to have consensus on the way you're going to scale this infrastructure if you're going to put it in internally. These models you're looking at right here can scale on an infrastructure incrementally instead of a proportional scale that you might see in a cloud-based model. There's a place for both. But if you're looking for when you hit that successful moment with your AI, you're going to want to scale incrementally because proportional is just going to be, it's going to be too expensive.
I lost you for a few seconds there, just maybe the last 15, 20 seconds, just so you know. I don't know if everyone did.
No, I had Justin the full time, and Suzan, you looked like you were still there.
So maybe it's me. I am on the Texas power grid, everybody. So it could happen at any minute. It's a little stormy here today. Couple things that come to mind too. One, I would encourage everyone on this call, right, to understand, your cyber, your security, and your architectural requirements around this. And you don't want to become the shadow AI, which I think would be a really easy thing to do, as we're all trying to kind of proof of concept or validate data or do something. So, again, I encourage you to work within the parameters of your governance and compliance in your particular world, right? Nobody wants to get anybody in trouble by saying, hey, go try something because it's fantastic. And it can not only make your day-to-day professional life easier, but it can make your IT career more powerful and impactful. So I just want to put that out there. So before you install anything on your work laptop, make sure that's okay. Just saying. And one of the things too, I know we have a lot of engagement on this, so I don't want to talk too much about it. But one thing that one part of my organization really is around observability and monitoring. And I think AI, ML, even some Gen AI down the road, specifically AI ops, is going to be a very powerful thing as I'm looking at analyzing and predicting and forecasting, maybe preventing an incident from happening, but also, you know, we've all talked about auto healing back, you know, from the initial VROPS days, way back, you know, a decade ago. We talked about self-healing in the most basic way. With AI ops now, we really have that safe, sane, and way of doing some auto healing. And so some of what I'm looking at is just from a very basic, pragmatic approach is how do we introduce AI ops, case management, aggregation, and prioritization of, you know, some of the noise that's coming in from an operational perspective, refine it, fine tune it, understand it, and then take that data and do something with it. Auto healing, for example, or scaling would be another good thing. And doing that across multiple environments, you know, whether it's multiple public cloud providers or multiple on-premises data centers and workloads and containers, that's really where I'm looking to focus in the next, say, 6 months. David, since you asked about timing in the very beginning,
Yep.
and really going after and identifying that low-hanging fruit to alleviate some of that toil and churn from my engineering and architecture folks so they can go focus on the next thing, maybe prompt engineering. And that's kind of, I think, for those of you who may not have started down the road, that might be a really good way to introduce it to your leadership and show the benefit and value of how powerful AI, ML, and GenAI can be. So,
And if you're going to get stuck supporting it, you have to ask yourself, do we have capacity currently to
yes,
support
exactly.
it? Right? It's like,
Don't build it and don't break it if you can't fix it. That's my role within my team. That's been the role for decades at this point. So yeah, don't break it if you can't fix it.
Yeah, and it's by the way, one interesting way in which AI ops, and we're starting to explore this with Cloud IQ and some of our internal stuff, is one of the ways that you can bring generative AI to AI ops. You know, AI ops, again, we want the consistent answer every single time, but sometimes you can use generative AI to interrogate the data that's there to go find the needle in the haystack. So like, show me, you know, if there has been any incidents in the last 24 hours. It'll then go pull up the data set from, you know, Cloud IQ or whatever. And then you have the corresponding telemetry data, you have the view of it. And now you can go address that in your management stack.
Yeah, absolutely. Just having that telemetry and that integration and that correlation to anything that's going on in your environment. You know, let's just say the network's down because it's always the network. And
It's always DNS.
you know, I know, sorry guys. And you pop, you know, what pops up really in your kind of your visibility into this, right? Your visualization tools, or, you know, could be your observability monitoring space. What pops up is, hey, you can correlate against a change, or you can correlate against something else that's going on. This is incredibly powerful. And really, at the end of the day, what your leaders want is they don't want the newest, shiniest thing. What they want to know is what's in it for them. And what's in it for them right now is, you know, reducing your mean time to resolve, faster mean time to detect and acknowledge, which translates into service availability, productivity, better customer experience. Our teams are being more efficient because we're not trying to troubleshoot with a shotgun effect. So this is kind of some of the real world stuff, and giving you some tools to help go after it and justify it with your leadership teams, right? And just trying to give you, you know, yes, we're going to use the AI, the Gen AI and the AI ML to get there, but what's in it for them? What's in it for them is make your customers happier. So at the end of the day, I think that's why we're all here.
Suzan,
Yeah, one of the other.
Go ahead, Justin.
I was just going to say, one of the other things that we face a lot is trying to understand what use cases may be applicable. And, you know, I think we could do a whole nother session on this, but in a nutshell, right? Once you identify those use cases, you look, the way to identify those use cases is to look for, you know, the value, and you've got to balance that with the feasibility. And at Dell, we've been in that process for quite a while, right? We actually instantiated Jeff Boudreau as our chief AI officer. It's our first chief AI officer ever. So pretty interesting stuff. We altered our AI strategy to adopt into GenAI. And what that means is internally, we've been eating a lot of dog food. And I see us, right, we're implementing generative AI across a lot of our processes and use cases. Content generation, I'm in marketing, so content generation around blogs and technical white papers. How do we iron out the process and implement the generative AI in there? And what we've done is built services offerings around this. And I just bring that up because every customer I talk to, almost everyone is, how do I get started? How do I ID use cases, and how do I scale? And our services teams have built practices around that specifically. And so I would just, kind of a plug, I'll throw it out there.
Yeah.
If you have questions about how to get started, where to go, talk to your account managers and have them talk to the services teams, because you can have conversations, that won't cost you a thing. And
Yeah,
then you can
I
look
plugged
forward
the,
from there.
I plugged the half-day accelerator workshop in the Q&A. So yeah,
Oh,
definitely
perfect.
talk to your account rep, and get time, because that's a very easy and fast way to move forward. The first thing we'll tell you, and I heard Michael Delsol say this on one of my day sessions. You heard it too, Justin. You were there in Round Rock. This is an outcome based conversation. It's not boxes, right? It's not, you don't start with like which server do I buy? You start with what am I trying to solve for the business? And from there you back into what is the infrastructure I need?
So guys, one thing I'm hearing here and I'm wondering about is, if you've now got this great tool that can go through all sorts of data and find the needle in the haystack, how do you balance that with, I need to save this data versus I don't need to save this data? Because at some point,
Well, I'm gonna be crazy about this, because I said this 5 years ago, and now I'm like patting myself on the back because I'm like, I was right. So we used to have a campaign here, Data Capital, and I was like a digital pack rat. I was like, save everything, because what I was saying then is, you may not know what question to ask today, but I assure you, if you delete the data, you will not know tomorrow. And that's a scary proposition, because here's the thing. I think it was something like 80%. There's different percentages, so I don't want to be like, this is 100% an accurate statement. But I think it was something like 80% of data is dark. Like, it's never been seen by human eyes. It's exhausted from all your activities. Well, guess what? Now you have a way to interrogate everything. You can ask a question, and if it's in that data, you can find an answer. Now, mind you, at the same time I say this, I'll speak out of my other side of my mouth and say, it's always better to have a very manicured and curated data set. That's always better. But still, there's things you can find that in the long tail of your data that you would never know if you didn't keep it.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds
I
like
would
an
challenge the
interesting
chat
challenge.
I think it'd be interesting from the chat to see who has a plan in place to automatically delete data after a certain time, right? I mean, I'm sure a few do, but for the most part, we all keep it anyway.
Or to put it in cold storage.
Yeah.
I mean, we have great
Interesting
archiving
stuff.
options these days. It's
Well, that's a funny thing, is I had a customer years ago who they put a bunch of their data in cold storage, but then they would need to access it and analyze it, and so that makes it much worse, because one, now it's slow, and two, it's expensive to pull it back out again.
yeah. If you're going to fetch your data, make sure you can get to it. That's for sure. I think we're really closing in, David, on kind of Q&A time. I don't see any questions in the Q&A section, but I know we've been pretty chatty in the chat. So yeah, Daniel, you're right. Content is king. It used to be data is king, but now I think it's what we do with that data that's king. So Dave, do you want to?
Well, so we've
Take us
got one
home?
open question. It looks like there's a request for the slides. So I think I can work with Justin and Nick and see if we can PDF these and get them out to the attendees, or we'll figure out how to distribute those to folks. So fantastic there. Justin, Nick, Suzanne, thank you so much for this conversation. It flew by. I do think that I'd love to bring you back in a little bit maybe in a quarter, maybe, you know, in a little bit longer than a quarter when we've got some openings. But I think this is something that, you know, it's not going away and it's going to move fast. And it feels very overwhelming from, you know, it felt a little overwhelming going into. There's some great things that you gave everybody to think about, but it also adds to, yeah, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of overwhelm. So process and just smart ways to attack it are very helpful.
And
as I'm
also,
talking
you know,
here-
socializing it with your leadership, right? How do you get people on board and where do you start? I think that's really important. And I know Justin and Nick have a lot to talk about on this subject. So yeah, it sounds like both of you are willing to come back and we'd love to have you for sure.
Can we do a Joseph's
Great.
question first? I want to.
Yeah. Please,
Yeah.
please hit those. There's a couple that came in.
Yeah.
It looks like someone might have joined a little bit late.
Yeah, I'll do Joseph's first. I want to make sure we get that one. It seems like AI will be driven by a million different AI SaaS solutions. Will it most likely be picking and choosing? So interesting enough, what I would say here is AI will inject itself into pretty much every single ISV's product. I guarantee you that. Then there's the question of your data going into those products. Do you feel safe? Are you getting the right guarantees? Do you have the right data sovereignty? And it's weird because it's not always a simple answer because like you have Bing Chat Enterprise or whatever they're calling it now. They're calling it Microsoft Copilot, and they're talking about having basically secure. I forget what the enterprise grade security guarantee, which means that they're not reading your data. Then you look at OpenAI on Azure, and if you get down into the fine print, there's a non-zero chance that somebody inside Microsoft at some point will look at your data, right? And then there's things like governments that can put in requests. And I'm sure if you're doing M&A activities, I'm sure that pretty soon they're going to start being like, what are they typing into the generative AI tools they're using when that comes up? So there's concerns around that. I'd be very careful about the AI SaaS-based applications. But I would say this, if you're talking about models, turning around models, picking and choosing, they'll keep leapfrogging each other. What Jeff Boudreau said when I was in Boston was right now you just got to get started. Your data is really going to be what differentiates, not necessarily the model. They're somewhat interchangeable, and you'll see like Mistral right now I think is being the hot one right now that everyone's saying Mistral's better. Next week it could be GPT-5, it could be Meta. So you're going to make an investment in this, and you're going to have to switch over. Now that's a good thing about Dell is that we're building these Dell validated designs and Dell reference designs for all these different models, so that if you buy the infrastructure and you need to switch, you're going to have documentation on how to do that, right? Anything to add, Suzan or Justin?
Just wanted to thank everyone who was asking such great questions and making comments around their experiences and what they were doing in the chat. Thank you everyone for doing that. I know Jenny posted a link to a survey, and don't forget there's a gift card on the line. So yeah, you might want to take 30 seconds and do that. And again, there's a lot of unknowns with this. And I think one of the bigger concerns again is, how do we have confidence in the output and how do we put guardrails around it? So, to Nick's point, read those end user agreements before you sign anything and make sure you know where and how and when your data is going to be used. I think that's the critical piece. So yes,
think I
and
want
kick the tires
Copilot
behind
to
your
read.
firewall. Absolutely.
Yeah. I want Copilot to read the end user agreements for me.
Oh, how much time do you have?
I'm sure you're going to get an answer.
Hey, Jenny.
Panel, thank you so much. Suzanne, thanks for being here. I want to bring these guys back. I'll work with Jenny and their schedules to get them back here. I will make a plug too. The user group's going to be at Dell Technologies World. So if you guys are at Dell Technologies World, look for our meeting. It's going to be Tuesday afternoon, like it usually is. These conversations are great breakout conversations. Some might even say they're better with beer or wine or, any beverage that of your choosing. but it's great in person. So AI is fantastic. Conversations about AI are better in person. So if you're coming to DTW, mark your calendars and join us, and let's have conversations. I'll make sure Justin and Nick are there. I know Suzanne's going to be there.
And by the way, talk to
there.
your reps. I may be running another edition of our generative AI days, which is a basically 2-hour workshop.
Nice,
Well,
Nick.
when you do, Nick, let us know, and we'll help get the word out to anybody from the user group who wants to join you there. That's fantastic. Folks, thank you very much. It is 10 till. Thanks again to Dell Technologies for helping make this happen, sponsoring the community hour. Jenny, we're back to you.
Yeah, thank you again for joining today. Suzanne, Justin, and Nick, great conversation. We're excited to have you again. As Suzanne mentioned, as we've mentioned, please fill out that survey for us. It only takes a few minutes. It really helps us determine what you want to hear in the future. We have a lot of great events coming up. Maybe you'll see us at more in-person events, more to come. Check your email, check our social links, and then details will come on that. With all that being said, if you enjoyed today and you enjoy being a member of Elevate, share it with your coworkers, with your friends. We would love to have them, and we'll see you next month. Take care, everyone.
Yep, and the communication for the meeting at DTW will be coming out. Jenny, I think you'll be sending out some come to our event communications.
Yes.
And I think we'll have or registration will be open very shortly through the website.
Correct.
All right, and come say hi, everybody.
Yeah. Come say hi. We'll be on the
Come
show
say hi.
floor.
I'll give you a t-shirt.
Come say,
I have one
hey,
job on
hi.
this ship.
You did a great job last year.
I did. I gave away a lot of t-shirts. This time, order more mediums. That's all. Okay.
No,
All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Had a great time. Thank you,
Bye.
Nick. Thanks,
Thanks
Justin.
all.
It's always good to see
Bye-bye.
you guys.
Bye.
Okay.